everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I have just gotten back from a lunch with one of my best friends, and we were having a conversation that I immediately thought, I want to talk about this on my podcast. I'm not going to go into detail about exactly what we're talking about, obviously, but the vague gist of the conversation, I was like, this is so fucking frustrating. This is something in life. It's just like the bane of everyone's existence, I feel. And I wanted to discuss because I think there's probably no one that couldn't relate to this topic. So I was talking to my best friend, and she was talking about this person in her life that she had sent a message to. This person had done something that had upset her, which was objectively an upsetting thing. I'm obviously being vague, but she'd done something kind of shit. So my friend had sent, does this make sense? Are we following? Am I speaking English? My friend sent her a message that was very, very delicately worded, very, very polite, and just a communicating kind of vibe. Do you know what I mean? Just, this is kind of how it comes across. This is how I'm feeling. Like, I'm not trying to attack you here. I just thought I'd bring it up kind of text. And it got like the world's most shit response because some people are just like that. And we were talking about this, and I was like, the amount of fucking people that I feel like, to be fair, there's probably only like two people. There's like two prominent people in my life that I felt this way with, but I feel like everyone has at least one person in their life that I like to refer to these people as a brick wall type of person where you could say anything, you can do anything, and you get fucking nowhere with them. They think what they think, they are who they are, and they are not open to anything. This is like probably in the last few years of my life the most like frustrating kind of thing I've dealt with. It's people like this. I have a really low tolerance for these kinds of people, okay? And I thought I'd talk about, because like I said, I feel like everyone has at least one person in their life that they feel like they just, you know, when you kind of feel like you have to walk on eggshells with some people because they take offense to a lot of things. And it's one thing to be sensitive, that's a different thing. But it's like you could word something really kindly and you could be really soft and gentle and just be saying how you feel, and they make you feel like shit for it, or they make you feel really difficult. That's what I've experienced mainly, is people make you feel really difficult and awkward and just like you're bringing unnecessary shit up, and it's kind of like conflict avoidant people, I suppose. But it's like no one's trying to have any conflict here. I'm just trying to say how I feel. And a lot of people don't like that. A lot of people, I've realized, don't know how to communicate. And this is not me saying that I'm like the perfect person and I know how to communicate perfectly. Like, obviously, this is something that you can never really perfect. Like, when you're dealing with people and talking to people about your feelings, like, it's never gonna be like, oh yeah, I can do that perfectly and never, like, nothing goes wrong. It's always gonna be a bit, like, iffy. But I like to think that if someone came to me with how they felt about something, I I'm not going to respond in the world's worst way ever. Do you know what I mean? I feel like I want people to come to me with how they feel about things, and I want the freedom to do the same back. But some people are brick walls. This is what I mean. I have a couple people in my life like this. I think there's a few variations of these people. The one that I was talking to my friend about for lunch today, her person in her life that she was like, she's kind of like, you know, when you hit a point where you're like, do I even bother saying how I feel? Because it never fucking goes well. Like, I will never get a good response out of this person. Her person will just, you will say how you feel, and she will respond with, like, I cannot believe you said this. This is so upsetting. Like, I've done this and this and this for you, and this is how you, like, making you feel like you've said something fucking awful and, like, messed up to them and been so ungrateful and so disrespectful, when the reality is your text was actually quite polite. They just don't like people to, it's just like a defensive thing where it's like, I'm not fucking attacking you. Like, grow up. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is such a pet peeve of mine where people, I don't know, it's natural, obviously, if someone's coming to you with something that's could be considered a critique, on you. We do have a tendency to get defensive because it can feel like someone is, attacking your character or something. And there's always so many layers, it's never fucking simple. Like, I understand getting defensive because I think we all to an extent do. That's kind of all of our like knee-jerk reaction to someone critiquing us in any way. We're just kind of like, what the fuck? Like, that's not what I meant. That's not what I meant. I didn't mean to do that, and they've taken it wrong, blah, blah, blah. But like, I'd like to think that you can feel that way for a minute and then you can like breathe and then sort your shit out a second and like actually hear them out. But some people don't fucking do that. They just instantly are like, I cannot believe you'd say this. And it's, I cannot stand it. My tolerance, like I said, so small for people that I can't communicate with, because it's kind of what we were talking about at lunch is like some people are so conflict avoidant because they think that it makes life easier, and they think that conflict and talking about things is just a faff, and it's just unnecessary, and it turns into an argument, and some people just don't want to fucking do it. They don't want to hear about it. They're just like, can we just move on? Can we just move on? Like, I personally, I'm someone who, like, I obviously get quite anxious. So, like, I like to communicate. I like to be very open. I like to have people in my life where the doors are always open for us to just say how we feel and no one's fighting. This is the thing, is I couldn't tell you the last time I had a fucking argument with anyone other than maybe like my mum, but that's like different. Do you know what I mean? I kind of accredit that to having people in my life that are open to communication, that I can talk to about how I feel, and they can come to me with how they feel, and we can hear each other out. Do you know what I mean? To me, that's like, there's then rarely a need to argue, because anytime something becomes 1% of an issue, you chat about it and it's gone. Nothing builds up to be so tense and so like buried within you that you're like, fuck, and then you like explode at them. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't need to get to that point when you're open with each other. And this goes for like friends, family, relationships, like, because I think if you are avoidant to conflict, if you want to call it conflict, do you know what I mean? Then I don't think you can really have that close of a relationship. I think people think avoiding conversations about how people feel or discussing things and communicating, avoiding that keeps the relationship like on a positive note all the time. But really, I think it ruins it, because you can never really feel that close to the person, and you always feel like, I don't know, I really struggle with where I feel like even if nothing's really happened, it just makes me physically uncomfortable if I feel like I'm around someone where I can't voice how I feel even if I wanted to. I just feel like I have to like bite my tongue and sit there and look happy, and like maybe I am happy, but if there's something I want to say, I don't want to have to fucking like swallow it and just never say it because this person's gonna have like a hissy fit. Do you know what I mean? To me, that really is an immature thing, because people have feelings and people should say them, and it's not disrespectful. Obviously, it depends how you word it, but in this instance where I was with my friend, her text, I read it and I was like, that's obviously, I can understand to an extent getting that and being like, oh shit. But to be like, you're disrespecting me, like, what the fuck? Do you know what I mean? Some people just respond in ways where I'm like, how do you function? How have you gotten this far in life? Where someone expresses their feelings and you're like 50 and you just are like, oh my God, what? Like, I don't understand how people get this far in life with that mindset. But I think what is so damaging about this, what's so shit about this, which is kind of why I wanted to talk about it, because when I was talking to my friend about it, she was saying is making her question if she's a bad person, because she was like, I have read this text like 15 times over trying to work out how it was so fucking offensive. And obviously it wasn't. But like, when people respond like this, even though it's very much a them issue, it's a reflection of them, it's just they are not someone who can deal with this kind of thing, it makes you question yourself, which is the main thing that I think makes it so complicated and messy. Is it ends up making you think you've said something awful, you've done something, you're a bad, it genuinely makes you feel like you're a bad person. Like in my life, in experiences where I've tried to communicate with people that either cannot take any sort of criticism, which is so fucking difficult because everyone is critiquable, if that's a word. Everyone is critiquable, and if you're dealing with people in your daily life, which we all are, you are going to inevitably, no matter how good of a person you are, do things wrong or say things wrong or upset people or annoy people or say something that came across like really shit when you really didn't mean it to. That's just being a human being. And people are allowed to speak their thoughts about that to you. So I do not understand, like I said, how people go through life getting that worked up and defensive and offended, because I'm like, you know you're not perfect. You know everyone knows that we all have the capability of saying something incorrect. Like, that's just being human. So I don't really understand the mindset of being like so offended, because like obviously that's possible. Like I said, like dealing with people that either can't take any sort of critique or see every form of like anyone communicating as an attack or some sort of argument or fight, they make you spiral about yourself. They make you think, what am I doing that's so wrong? Because they will blow up at you and they will snap at you and they will say shit that isn't justified, really. It's obviously just like a personal thing that you've obviously hit a nerve of some sort, you know, which I can also kind of empathize with, but not every fucking time anyone comes to you with anything. I just think there's a line where it's like, grow the fuck up. Do you know what I mean? From my experience, there becomes a point where I really do have to massively distance myself from these people, even if they are family. Like, this is the thing, is I don't think, I'm of the belief that even if someone is in your family, if they are really affecting your mental health and they're making you feel like shit, and again, you can't get anywhere with them and you've tried every avenue you could have thought of, I think it's healthy to distance yourself from anyone. I don't care if it's like your mum. Do you know what I mean? Like, if it's really fucking with you for such a long time, like I think you need boundaries and you need to look after yourself. But I just think it's not something that you can really sustain a relationship with someone that way, because you end up resenting the fuck out of them. You end up feeling pissed off just being in their presence. Do you know what I mean? Like, even if nothing had happened that day, there's so much under the surface that you feel that, you know, maybe you've mentioned before and they've just turned it down, like shut you down for it, or they've responded really badly, or it's been dropped, or they just don't give a fuck. Whatever it is, there's nothing worse than feeling like you have to just put on a smile around someone when they've hurt your feelings repeatedly and they don't seem to give a shit. Do you know what I mean? But I kind of just wanted to come on here and talk about it because my friend was saying, like, I feel like a bad person. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like I've done something awful. And that feeling just resonated with me so much because, like I said, I've experienced that with people in my life where it's just like, you end up rereading shit you've said or re-going over like a situation in your head and you're like, I still don't fucking see what I did that was so bad, but I don't see how else they would respond like that unless I'd done something awful. Like, it makes you, I don't know, it's kind of like there's some people that you just think, you think so differently from them and you have such a different mindset that you kind of can't fathom how they would respond or act the way that they do, because it's so far from who you are. We're all so different, and sometimes I think you just come across people that you clash so fucking hard, and sometimes that's no one's fault, but sometimes it is just a fact that they are immature in areas that don't work for you anymore. Like, I do think sometimes you can kind of be, you do have to be to some extent on a similar maturity level, I think, to people that you're going to be close with. Because I think if you mature in a way of gaining better communication skills and, you know, talking through things and working on not being defensive and working on, like, you know, being able to talk through shit with people, if you work on that and that becomes something that you can do, being around people who can't do that at all becomes quite intolerable. I think the more that you grow in certain areas, your tolerance for people that haven't quite gotten there goes down quite a lot, I've noticed. And for me, I feel like something that I have really prioritized working on is if people come to me with something that they feel, not just snapping at them and being like just being able to be like, okay, they're not there's a difference between someone just saying like, something has upset me and, you know, it came from you. There's a difference between that and then being like attacking your character and you as a person. And I think I worked quite a lot on realizing that, I don't know, I realized that it's not that deep. It doesn't mean like, they're not calling me a shitty human being. They're not calling me a shitty person. They're just saying like something that I said didn't feel nice to them or something. Do you know what I mean? And I'm someone who generally is pretty mentally stable. I may not seem it, but I'm generally, in my day-to-day, pretty fucking mentally stable. Okay, there's not many things that like send me down an absolute spiral. Like I can kind of self-soothe, I guess is the right term. But when I tell you, this is the only thing that turns me into an absolute mad woman. I'm not even joking. I'm not even joking. Like I said, there's a couple of people in my life where if I invest a little bit too much energy into them, or I spend a little bit too much time with them, around them, whatever, I lose my mind because I just can't fucking handle it, because it gets in your head and it's exhausting and so frustrating, and I'm like, oh my god, I cannot handle how different the way that we function is, and I cannot deal with I just can't fucking deal with you. There's like particular people that will turn me into a mad woman. I'm not even joking. And I don't think anything else makes me feel that. I don't even know what emotion that is. It's like I feel so triggered. I feel so triggered. Like, and it's like something that I know we all have people in our lives like this where you just can't, you're like, I can only be around them a certain amount of time before I lose my mind. And I know that because I talk to my friends and family about it all the time, where everyone has one person where they're like, I just don't know what the fuck is wrong with this person. Like, what have I done in this situation? I don't understand. And I'm like, nothing. So there's just, some people are just really, really difficult. And it's not a lot of people. Like I said, I genuinely feel like most people have like one or two people in their life where they're like, actually, I can't deal with this human being at all. Because everyone can be difficult, but there's like a different level of like, what planet are you fucking from? And like, I think there is no answer other than you need to distance yourself. Sometimes cut them out. Like I'm generally quite, I avoid that advice because I think people nowadays like cut people out for no reason all the fucking time. And it's like, that's a bit much. Do you know what I mean? Like, just because someone's mildly annoyed you doesn't mean you need to cut them out. Like, that's not nice. But when people are like genuinely fucking with your head all the time, I don't even think half the time they mean to. Like I said, I do think some of it is like a lack of maturity. If you feel called out and like attacked, like personally attacked every time someone like tries to speak to you about their feelings or something, to me it's just like you have a lot of shit to figure out that you're avoiding figuring out. And it's just like, it's so easy to hit a nerve, because I feel like anything you say, you hit a nerve. And it's just like, is there anything I can say that doesn't trigger you? Do you know what I mean? But like I said, I wanted to talk about this because if you're in this position where you are really trying your best with someone and it's not like, no matter what you say, what you do, you feel like everything you're doing is wrong. Do you know what I mean? Like they respond as if you've like done something awful to them all the time. It's a lot of the time it's not you, because if their response, it's like a pattern, like that's just kind of their typical behavior. I said about this friend, like, oh my god, is my key still in my car? I hope that's not draining my battery. I don't really know what that's doing. She was saying like, before I even sent this message, I knew I was gonna get this exact fucking response. And everyone else in her life knew that too, because it's typical of this person to respond in this way. That, to me, is like, she was coming to me being like, have I done something awful? And I was like, this is a pattern. It's not just like her randomly getting upset by something and you're like, oh shit, maybe what's going on? Do you know what I mean? It's like, if you're at a point where you know that whatever you say, however delicately you word something, however gently you go to them approach them with something, they're just gonna like make you feel bad for bringing it up. Do you know what I mean? make you feel like you've done something wrong every single time, where you have to actually debate whether or not to bring up your feelings with certain people because you're like, is it fucking worth it? Like, all it does is piss them off. It's most likely not you. Like, this is something else I was talking about recently to actually the same friend. I was saying, like, I feel like absolutely countless amount of times when I've gone to people with my feelings, or tried to just communicate something, whether it's been a friend or it's been a boyfriend or it's been a family member, like literally all of the above. The amount of times I've done that and I've been met with a response where I just feel like shit for even mentioning it. It really does start to fuck with you and put you off and make you feel like guilty for bringing shit up, or like anxious to bring stuff up because you're like, I feel like people are gonna get annoyed at me. And then it's refreshing when you have these people in your life that are actually a bit more on the same page as you, and you can be like, I didn't really fucking like that you said that, and they can be like, fair, sorry, done, not hard. And I know sometimes it's not that simple, but there's so much shit that could be a 5-minute validating conversation on both ends and it's done, rather than, oh, I just don't like arguing, I'm gonna be conflict avoidant and I'm gonna fucking avoid it for my whole life. Okay, then everyone's gonna resent you. No one likes that. And people do see like it is effort, and I'm like, it's so much more effort to avoid it because you stop it being possible for you to actually have a genuine close relationship with anyone. I don't know, I just think it's so draining. Even just being like friends with someone where it's just like, I have to I have to agree with your side of everything. I have to agree with your experience in everything. I have to never have a problem. I cannot bring up my feelings, otherwise you're gonna make me feel like I've like stabbed someone. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're gonna make me feel like I've done something fucking awful. It's just exhausting because you feel like you can't be authentic around these people because you can't actually be like yourself. You can be half of yourself. You can be the half of you that has no problems, feels nothing, is just agrees with their experience 24/7. They're fine with you when you're like that, but when you actually maybe feel differently to them, or you're like, actually, I know you didn't mean anything by that, but it didn't feel nice on mine, they're not interested. Do you know what I mean? It's like they only really like you when you're being convenient and easy going and have no kind of feelings that contradict theirs, or that mean that they have to actually like be some form of empathetic towards you. I don't like that. To me, there's no fucking point, because that's not a real friendship or a real relationship or anything. If you can only show up as the version of you that is happy all the time, because it's unrealistic. It's not true. You have to bite your tongue and like swallow your thoughts all the time. Swallow your thoughts? I don't know what that meant. But you know what I mean? It's just not genuine. Like, it's not real. Because people, like I said at the start, no matter how good of a person you are, you're gonna fuck up. You're gonna say things that maybe hurt someone's feelings. You're gonna be annoying. You're gonna leave a mess in the house. You're gonna word something a bit weirdly. You're gonna do something that annoys someone. Irrelevant of anything. That's just gonna happen. And obviously some shit, like, we don't care enough to bring up, like, it's fine. Like, for example, if someone's like made one comment that you're like, oh, they probably, like, I know them well enough, I don't really fucking care, like, some shit you can just drop. But I think, to be honest, I think that more happens when you're kind of like, I don't fucking care. When this person is like on the same page as you and they normally are pretty open and you can go to them with anything, you're a lot more like forgiving and a lot more like, oh, it's not that fucking deep. You don't need to talk about shit so much because you're aware that if you did want to bring anything up, you can, and there's no resentment and shit that you like. You're just like, oh, they probably meant nothing by that. I'm not gonna fucking bring it up. But when you're dealing with people where you can't talk about anything, the smallest thing feels so aggravating because you've got that resentment there that they kind of just have to breathe wrong, and you're like, oh my god, they're pissing me off because they just you hit a point where you're like, I can't do it. You need the boundary. Do you know what I mean? So this is my advice, that be close with people that you can be open with. Be close with people and put your energy into people that you can be your full self with and you can talk to about shit and you can say how you feel, and they're not going to have a go at you. And that they're not going to get mad at you for saying how you feel. Obviously, word things nicely. Don't be a dick, because then they have every right to be like, what the fuck? But like, put your energy and spend your time with people where you feel like you can be fully yourself, you're comfortable, and you can say what's on your mind, and that they're grown up enough to be able to handle one fucking minor critique every now and then. Do you know what I mean? You feel so much better for it, and you feel so much more like validated and seen around these people. You just like really appreciate it. Whereas people that don't make you feel like that, I really, personally, I don't think you should bother. Like, I think everyone does deserve people that they can be fully themselves around. It feels so nice to feel that comfortable where you can just say shit. Obviously, I don't mean just say whatever the fuck you want, but like you can say shit and it's just like an open, safe place. There's such a difference between having friends that are like that, having a group of friends who are like that, or just a best friend who's like that, or your boyfriend is like that, or whatever, or maybe it's your parents, I don't know. Investing your time and energy into those people, you start to feel a lot more comfortable with your feelings and your experiences as well. You don't feel so guilty for shit. You just feel like encouraged. I think that's important, like being around people that encourage you to be yourself. And if something's up, say it. If something's bothering you, bring it to me. We'll talk about it. We'll work it out. It doesn't need to be an issue. It doesn't need to be a conflict. It doesn't need to be a 10-hour conversation. It's not something to be avoided. It's like encouraged. These types of people, I think, are the ones to put your energy into, because then your relationship, like I said, can be so much more, because you can surpass that surface level situation where it's like, yeah, everything's great all the time. That's just, it's stuck at this level. If you can actually talk about shit, then you can like be really good friends or have a really healthy relationship, you know? Anyway, thank you for listening. I wanted to point out, due to my friend talking to me about this, that if you feel like this, sometimes you're not insane and you're not being too much. You know, I think some people will just make you feel like you're too much and you're being too difficult and you're always too much of something. And it's just like, to some people, you're too much, and to some people, you're barely asking for anything. It's just, you need to find your kinds of people. Do you know what I mean? I think the more energy you put into people that just really, really can't fucking deal with shit, the more you're prolonging meeting people that are a bit more on your page. Do you know what I mean? A bit more on your level. But yeah, I hope you're having a good week. I hope that you have good people in your life that support you and encourage you to be open about how you feel. Thank you for listening. And I will talk to you next week.